two, there's already no you.
alreadynottwo.com.
When I see old friends, they ask, and that have known me from childhood, they say, "What do you do now?" And I say, "I talk about this." And they might have seen on Facebook some of my posts. I've got a few old friends who will still remain Facebook friends. Not many. Most have gone. And they go, what on earth are you talking about? And so I say I'm talking about this, and I use the word this. And then they'll ask me, so what do you mean? What do you mean, this? Most don't. Just one or two have asked me that. And I said, well, how long have you got? Because unbelievably, I can talk for hours about this. So I'll talk for an hour about this. So this is complete. And it's complete because this is the end. Completion. This is the end. There isn't anything to come. All talking of what's to come, all talk of the future is just pure imagination. The future does not arrive. So this is death. This is the end, always ending. And this is birth, always new, absolutely pristine. And there's no space between the birth and the death. So where I live, self lives in this imaginary space between. That's what I am, is this illusion of continuity that is between birth and death when there is no space between. And so this is timeless, with the appearance of time. This is absolute, with the appearance of, all appearance is relative. This is empty, absolutely empty, totally void, nothing. And this is all there is. And so you end up talking shit like this is and this isn't. And there's no contradiction in that. When of course it's utterly contradictory. And the contradictions just don't seem to matter anymore. So this isn't a finding, or a conclusion, or a resolution, or a destination. It's the impossibility of arriving or leaving. And so you would think there would then be continuity, but there isn't any continuity because this is birth and death. And I could say simultaneously, but that's misleading because there isn't anything without time simultaneous Doesn't have any meaning at all. We just talked at the cafe and you went like that. And that's, so here's me, here's everything else. That's how it appears to self. I'm separate from everything else. That's not how it is. I mean, you might sit like this. Maybe that's the reason. Throughout history, this is, virtually all religions do this. And because there is no space between. Illusion isn't the right word, because illusion is that I always think of the word illusion like a mirage. On a sunny day you look at the road and it appears that there's water in the road. I was talking with my little boy about this the other day. I said, look, there's puddles in the road, and as we get closer they'll disappear. And he loved it because he hadn't noticed. So that's an illusion, so it looks as though, but self isn't illusory in that sense, in that you can actually see it, because you've never seen yourself. You've never known yourself. It's an elaborate, quite elaborate. Delusion is better than illusion. Self deludes itself in this fantasy of separation. So there isn't any distance between me and you, between this and that, between what is and what isn't. There's no distance between anything. There's no space between. And that might sound as though there's, so what you might be thinking, well, that's not how it is for me. No, it's a very strong conviction, this sense of isolation, this sense of separateness, that just a few human beings, not many, find incredibly uncomfortable. And they hear that, oh, there's a possibility that that could disappear. And so you end up being attracted to non-duality and listening to human beings who say, oh, that no longer appears. I've got some really bad news on that, because if you're waiting to know the absence of that separation, there will be no revelation, because there can't be. Again, it's just another wish fulfillment, another hope that it will be different, it could be different. This is the end of all possibilities. What I'm speaking about, or what's suggested, is that there are no possibilities, because possibilities only exist in an imagined future.
And that's the difference.
And that is the difference, because the waiting, really what self is a waiting. Or I had two strategies, I don't know about you, but my two strategies were hiding and running. So I was either trying to escape by hiding from what is, or running towards. And in fact, they're the same strategy. Whether you're hiding from the reality of how life is how life is. It's outrageously simple and yet unobtainable. This can't be attained. There's nothing to be attained. Whatever you say you've attained is already lost in the attainment of it. So this is not what you want. If you want this, it's always something else. You only want that. You can't want this. This is the case already. So any desire appears, but so desire is natural, wanting is natural, but you won't attain what you want because it'll always be something else. You could say that's why life always feels unsatisfactory to self, to me, because it's never complete. I didn't get what I wanted. Sounds dreadful, doesn't it? And in a way, for me, this message is, even if you're attracted to it, you're repelled by it. You can't not be. Because self can, you only have to have a modicum of intelligence to see, well, I'm not going to get what I want. If this is heard, then it's already clear that you can't achieve what you're hoping to achieve. Because even if it's achieved, you won't even know you've achieved it. You can pretend that's what you want, but I doubt it. So this is empty. Everything is empty. And the emptiness doesn't say anything, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't have a purpose. And then there's the fullness. The emptiness is completely full of meaning and purpose and story and what's happening. And there's no difference between what's happening and nothing happening. This is stories. The fullness is the stories. The emptiness is the silence. And they're not two. All the stories mean what they mean relatively, but again, all the meaning is empty. It's really empty of any meaning. and this is love. You won't like that. That everything is love. Self can't stand the idea that love is not conditional. Love is nothing to do with whether I like it or not. Love is nothing to do with whether it's what I wanted or not. So again, you could pretend that you want unconditional love. I guarantee you don't. Self always wants love to be on my terms. I'll decide what love is. Well, you could try. That's why, you could say that's the root of most suffering. That I need to say what is loving and what's not loving. What love is. Well, love isn't anything, it's everything. With no exception at all. So everything you detest is love. Everything you hate is love. That's not love that self would ever even entertain. And love's not really the right word, but we don't have a word for unconditionally everything but just being as it is. There isn't a word for that. And I guess that's why spirituality is traditionally most people who have wanted to feel unconditional love have really emphasized things like surrender, acceptance. But of course, trying to accept is just more resistance. I don't know how hard you've tried to surrender to what is. There's a game. I can't recommend that to anyone. But of course, resistance is unconditional love. Rejection is unconditional love. This is kind of the antithesis of most spirituality, which is always suggesting that love is a certain way, but not that way, this way. Always is a good word. This is always, and no way. This is not knowing you, not knowing me. This is not being seen. You can't see me. I can't see you. You've never seen me. You've never seen anyone. You can't be seen. So it's this. It seems like the death of self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-consciousness. But only in the remembering of how it felt to feel self-conscious, how it felt to feel self-aware, to try and cultivate greater self-awareness, because that was the way that I could complete myself. I'm incomplete because I'm not fully aware of myself. So again, this is the antithesis of most self-improvement. It's the annihilation of self-improvement. You might have already found that self-improvement doesn't work very well, if at all. One step forward, 3 steps back. So this is the end of moving forwards or backwards. No progress, no regression, no possibility of improvement. This simply can't be improved. That doesn't mean there won't be ideas of how it might be improved. You won't improve on those ideas either. They'll just be the thoughts that they are. But there is a peace. So this is the peace that passes all understanding, because it's so everything is paradoxical, because there is nothing more paradoxical than everything is nothing, and nothing is everything. I mean, it's the ultimate paradox. So maybe you've hoped to find nothing. My friend set up an organisation in London where he'd invite non-duality speakers, and he titled the organisation Seeking Nothing, because he thought it was funny, which it sort of was, you know, maybe once. It's a cheap joke. It didn't work for long. But all seeking is a joke, and it's what seems to appear a lot is great compassion for all seekers, regardless of what kind of seekers they are, whether they're spiritual seekers, romantic seekers, material seekers. It's all the fucking same game. Whatever I can get will lead me to, I don't know where. Self has no idea where. Just to maybe just, even if it's temporary, self, I don't give a shit. If I feel a little better for a little while, then it's worth it. But of course, that can get a little wearing. So of course there is no path, there is no way to get here. I mean, that must be obvious. If I say that, I could say that down the pub to people who have never heard non-duality before, and I went, well, you do know there is no way of getting here. And then they'll just say how they got here. I came on my bicycle, or I just drove here half an hour ago. No, I mean, you know, can you get here so that they can sort of get it, but of course they're not interested. So there is no way. But if there was a way, this would be my way. Disillusionment, failure, loss, grief, there must be a few more negatives I can think of.
Fear?
Definitely not. One thing that is fear. Yeah, I think fear is like a symptom of those. So people ask me, so you can't give me any tips then? Can you give me any tips? Any point, you know? I went, well, how bad is it at the moment? And they'll go, oh, it's pretty bad. No, tell me how bad it is. Yeah, it probably needs to get a lot worse. Because self-will is a holding on. It's where you'll grasp at anything. Self is only interested in existing. So fear is the most powerful way that self can assert its existence. I'm very alive when I'm afraid. And of course there is nothing to fear in this. What is there to fear if there's nothing happening? Self is only afraid of what might happen to me. Truly, not what is happening, but what might happen and what that means for me. What does it say about me? What does it mean? Does it mean I am a failure? Does it mean that others don't really love me? Does it mean that I'm unlovable? Does it mean... And fear is very... I would say fear is self's main weapon in keeping existent, of maintaining the illusion that I am. So I guess if you're still going to non-duality meetings, you're still waiting to know the absence of yourself. Because self can only imagine that I'll be there to know when I'm not there. That's why this is probably... This is the most disappointing, this is the absolute disappointment for me. Relief, but disappointment. Because there is relief in disappointment. Oh, I'm bereft. But fucking hell, at least I don't have to chase that shit anymore. So it's huge relief, which is the peace that passes all understanding. Why should I feel so peaceful when I feel everything has been lost and there's actually there's no point to anything, everything is meaningless, it's hopeless. Yeah. Well, that's a kind of melancholic bliss that self would run a fucking mile from. I would have never gone near it. I would say one of the, someone asked Nico earlier, so how is it different? One of the main, see, I've got to give you something to, I've got to give you a little carrot, but this is not a carrot that you would even imagine as a carrot. You know, it's like a rotten carrot dangled in front of you. Come on. And it's sorrow. It's sorrow. It's sadness, like the deepest sadness. Sorrow for yourself, for all selves, for everything. So it's not just that self doesn't exist, absolutely nothing. Absolutely, there are no existent things. It's the, and yet there are things. So all those you love, your most beloved, you know, your pets. Most people love their dog more than their children. Your children, your parents, your friends, your lovers. Absolutely, they don't exist, and yet, and there is no relationship. They have no relationship with you. So this unconditional love is drenched in sorrow, and that sorrow just amplifies the love. The love is, sorrow is so clearly, undoubtedly love. When my whole life, all I'd done is run from sorrow, hid from grief, hid from the ungraspable nature of everything. You know, I just wanted to keep everything. Of course you can't, there's nothing to keep. You can't, you never have anything. No human being ever has anything, not even themselves. And that feels incredibly loving in a most tragic, beautifully tragic way. There we go.
I have something to add or to say, not a question.
Sure.
Use the microphone, please. Okay. Okay. It's always on.
All right. It's always on. Wow. No, I was just bumbling, or I don't know how you call it in English, where you said you could have never want this, yes? Mm-hmm. And here it's like more or less a little fresh that it apparently collapsed. Mm-hmm. And it's true, I could have never wanted because it's nothing. But at the same time, I really always wanted it. I was always searching it. Mm-hmm. I was searching it so much. Mm-hmm. Even I could not know what it was, but because it's really, I could not say it's not a state or anything. No. And it's not a feeling, and it's not something, it's not even like that really something vanished, only maybe ideas, or it's energetic. Mm-hmm. But the apparent coming out is what I always wanted. even if it's not possible. But I always wanted it. I always wanted to die. I always was seeking this, because I had, when I was already like 4 years or something, I had the feeling that this is like a theater. Something is not right here. They all test me or something. I always had. There was always. Then my mom died, and where I was standing at her bed, when she was dying, and she took her last breath. Exhalation. Because with the inhale you come into existence, and with the exhalation you leave. And
There's already no you.
That she's going
NotTwo.
into this nothingness, and I wanted to be with her. So I always wanted to be with her. And it's not that now I am with her, but there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing else. No.
Yeah. So. Okay, maybe this is the question. Because a lot of speakers say, and it's right, that you could have never wanted this. At the same time, it's the only thing you want.
Yeah.
Is this so? This is the question. Can it be like this, that it's the same time, like paradoxically, like how it's always is? You want nothing, than just the collapse of the distance to life, because it's disturbing in every single shit. It's disturbing in everything. The distance to life is disturbing.
Yes,
and you
always
want to get rid of it. Is so.
Yeah, it's always. Well, you could say the whole feeling of being me is, because it's artificial. It's not really how it is. It's a violence. It's disturbing is a good word. Self is always disturbed.
Yeah.
I'm always. I don't want to live. I'm at a distance, and so I'm longing for connection. I don't know how it's been for you. My life was one of longing for connection, to be at one with. So it would be my parents, my brother in the family, and then with lovers, and then with friends, with nature, this longing to connect, to not feel this pain. It's painful. There's a pain of separation, of being disconnected, this distance, which doesn't exist. There really isn't a distance. That's why I loved it when you just went, well, it feels like it's. So it feels like, it may feel like, it doesn't have to, might feel like a coming together, that's union, which is what's longed for. But then I would say the disappointment is, of course, there is no union, there's nothing to be unified. So there is, there has been a sense of disappointment, because what I wanted was to feel the unification.
Yeah.
I don't feel that.
No.
There is just wholeness. There isn't a sense of, this is the fruition of my seeking, that I finally got to where I wanted to get to, which was unifying with the other, so that I will be at one, this at oneness. I never use the word oneness. I can say wholeness, because it sounds like, there isn't anything outside. But the one word I didn't use, which is Tony's favourite word, is boundless. The thing about oneness is, and quite a lot of speakers still talk about oneness, this isn't one. This isn't one. It's just that many and none and one are not three. There isn't a oneness. It isn't like the many become one. It isn't like nothing and one are not two. There's simply a completeness, a boundless completeness. The reason I don't like one is when I see one, this is visually, I just see a ball. I don't know what one is visual, what it looks like to you, but to me, oneness is a ball. Well, a ball is, there's outside of a ball, and there isn't an outside. This is it. There is not an outside. There isn't any outside. So what seems to not appear is this sense of, I am inside. Everything is outside. And I'm always trying to bridge the gap between. That's this longing for intimacy, for completion and wholeness. So it does. I understand when you explain it, but this is definitely not what I wanted, because I wanted to be there to feel the union and to know that I am now one with you. That is not what I'm speaking about. There is no sense of I am one with you. So I hear a lot of spiritual. I followed I tried to. It sounds very attractive that you and I are not two, that we can become one. But there's no you and I to become one. So in that sense, that's why I say that's the disappointment. The disappointment, but is only for, that's what I longed for a lifetime. It felt that's what I was seeking. And that's not a possibility. You cannot become one with me. There's already no you or me to become. We can't become unified.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little bit like the conditioning, then if there's a big disappointment. Because in this story, it was a lot of, there was a lot of meditation practice. So I always, if you really meditate for a long time, it's not very easy to go into a state of nothingness. And so I loved more and more this nothingness, and there was a longing to stay in this nothingness. So and now it's not only possible, but there's nothing else. So, but not that I can. So it's still different. It's not what I experienced before, because there was an experiencing of nothing. This is not an experience of nothing. No. It's there's nothing to experience, or I don't know. Everything word is wrong somehow. But still, it's and now, and maybe it's wrong, or maybe it's something different. What I'm talking about, I don't know, I have no idea.
Well, but no, you'll never know.
No, the only thing is it's just talking.
Yeah.
But now somehow afterwards, in. It's there's an understanding coming up how all these spiritual teachings and all these methods and techniques were maybe actually meant, because of course they're totally misleading. Because the long I was sitting in silence and I always thought the more I sit in this nothingness, the more it will be available for me, which was somehow true, but it had nothing to do with this.
No.
So it was misleading. It was really definitely misleading. It was reinforcing the me, because if I sit down and sit in meditation, I like reinforce the sense that I have to do something to get into nothing. But if it's already nothing and you try to come into nothing, so it's really reinforcing.
Yeah.
So all these techniques are definitely, like all non-dual speakers say, they are like misleading. It's really true. But afterwards, I really know how it was maybe actually meant, because it's a very, very same, I would say, energy which comes through. Like if you really sit in deep meditation, it's a very, very same energy, like when the me is no more, because there's no boundary. You cannot grab anything, but it's not oneness, like you said. I mean, yeah. It has no sense what I'm talking, so...
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Oh, it has as much sense as what anyone else says.
Yeah.
One of the beauties of this is you'll no longer be listening to what anyone else says, because no one will speak this any more clearly than you could speak it. Truly, I really mean that. And the one that you will resonate most with is the one that you call yourself. How funny is that? That's probably the ultimate cosmic joke. You've been listening to all these masters, male or female, all these enlightened beings, hoping that you could be where they are. Well, this just annihilates, literally and absolutely annihilates any possibility that you could be where any other human being is. And also it annihilates that any other human being could be closer or further away than the human being that you call yourself. So it's cliched, but there is, Nico says freedom. There is only freedom. Freedom can't be attained. It can't be lost. Can't be found. Can't be held. Can't be dropped. It has no substance. It has no substance. There is nothing. There are no handholds at all. That's why there may be terror. No, not everyone's falling away or, dying involves terror. But I wouldn't be surprised if most human beings feel terror. You've been holding on. Self is the energy of holding on. Is the sense of there is someone, you have hands. This is like having no hands. I mean, this isn't really relevant, but I do remember after going to it, you've had a few awakening experiences, no doubt. One of mine was, I was at Tony Parsons' retreat and I looked at my hands and it was so fucking obvious they weren't my hands. And it was very, very disconcerting. It was kind of wonderful, but terrifying. But I don't mean literally you don't have hands, because you don't have any. You don't have any body parts at all. And quite in a very ordinary but wonderful way, when the body's not your body, when it's just a body, again, that feels like love. You know how you've wanted to not just be okay with yourself, but you're okay with your body. All that body that dysmorphic feeling of, if only my calves were a little bigger, or just if I improved my pecs a bit, I wouldn't look, I'd just get rid of my stomach, and maybe I've had my nose done. I've been to LA a few times lately, and everyone has, it's the ultimate in self-body image. So when the body's not yours, there is an unconditional love for not just the body you've called yours, but for all bodies, human and other. Human beings are a lot easier to love when you don't see a human being with a self. So I don't love you. Human beings are naturally, the same species. So I'm not looking to love you, because I'd have to know you to love you. Well, I know I can't know you. It's not possible. And then there's this, maybe unconditional love's wrong. Ease is so easy, much easier being with human beings. Especially the absence of self-consciousness. Like you might be looking at me, and if I look at you, you might think that I could see you. And then you'll be thinking, what does he think of me? Well, I'm not thinking anything of you at all. Because I can't see you. And the absence of self-consciousness, there's an absolute certainty that you can't see me. So there's no self-consciousness. Because you still think you probably think I can see you. I can't. Well, I can't see anything. I see beautiful human beings. Even the ugly ones are beautiful. Isn't that wonderful? They're still ugly. They're still ugly, by the way, Marcus. They're still ugly, but in a beautiful way. All the arseholes are beautiful. They're still arseholes. They're probably more profoundly arseholes. Someone you dislike and you go, God, I can't stand them. But that's beautiful. Why is it beautiful? Simply because it is. You don't get to choose. I mean, you know this already. Self-love's when you meet someone and you go, oh God, I don't know why, but I actually feel sick. I fucking can't stand them. And I daren't tell anyone, because they'll go, well, what? You don't even know them. You get so judgmental. So you don't allow yourself the natural, because it's instinctive, just like dogs. You see dogs meet each other, and for no good reason, one dog and then they'll be sniffing each other's asses and having a lovely time. And then the next dog, it just growls and snarls. And human beings, we forget we're animals. Self is the forgetting of being an animal. And it's very simply because it's all about me. So life isn't better without me, but it is easier. Immeasurably. Because I am a fucking pain in the arse. Is such needy fucker. Me. This notion that because I feel so centered, I literally am the sun, and you poor bastards are just orbiting around my light. I am the center of the universe. That is how it is to be me. I mean, there's no doubt about that. This centeredness, the world revolves around me. Quite literally. It's such a fucked up delusion that 99.9% of humanity take to be a complete given and is never challenged. Don't go around challenging it with everyone you know. Selves don't appreciate it. I got really evangelical about this for a little while, but one evening with one of what I thought was one of my best mates with his hands around my throat, lifting me off the ground in the pub when I said he didn't exist. I did it once. I sobered up quickly after that. Yeah, and he still won't speak to me. Yeah, don't tell people they don't exist. Unless you like confrontation.
And you don't even have to tell them that they don't exist. If you say you don't exist, it's enough.
That's enough to get them angry,
Yeah.
but probably not to try and kill you. Because it's fine, you know, they might allow you to have the autonomy to say that you don't exist, you know. If I say, well, actually, I don't exist. They won't like it, of course, because that's threatening because if I don't exist, then maybe you don't. You know, so it is threatening, yeah.
I told my friend once.
Microphone, please.
I told my friend once that he doesn't really know me, or that he doesn't know me, and he was like, that really hurt him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's devastating, yeah. Yeah, because what is our relationship based on in that case? And it wouldn't be any good trying to explain to him that actually there's much more love without that. That's paradoxical, but true. It hit like a sledgehammer when it was like it was a revelation that I'd never been seen, and that I never could be seen by another human being.
What is a sledgehammer? I only know it from the song. Okay.
Yes, the biggest hammer. Yeah, it was. I cried for days. That I would be like a mourning, like grief for how hard I tried to all my life. I really tried to be seen by the other, especially my mother. I don't want to give Freud much credit, but you know, let's blame mothers. No, because as a child, the child wants to be seen by mother and father, but
you say like nobody can be seen or nobody can see, and for me it's easy to understand when there seemingly is a me, that there's no seeing, because there are so many ideas, like people only see what they think, they don't see what is there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult for me to understand that there is no seeing when there is nobody.
I'm only, there is seeming seeing. I mean, I don't mean perception by seeing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking perceptually. I'm just talking, it's just completely abstract. And even if it's understood that it doesn't even have to be a bodily felt experiential sense of you can't see me. Just intellectually, I can't see you. I can't see yourself. You can't see myself. You can just see a human being.
You mean because there is nobody?
No, can you see myself now?
If I can see you?
Yeah, can you see me? I mean, my me. Can you can you see Marcus's me? I mean, this is really this. I mean this experientially. It's just.
I see the bodies.
Yeah.
And I get some impressions.
Yeah.
And then there are some ideas and feelings, but I don't like really know who is there. No, I don't know.
So, do you have a sister?
I have a brother.
Do you know your brother?
No, I would say I know some parts of him, but not like...
Yeah.
I would never say I know him completely and fully on core.
No, all I mean is really simply, all I mean is, do you know his self? Do you know me?
Yeah, I even don't know what self means actually.
No, no one does actually, but
yeah.
No. But he would say he knows you, wouldn't he?
Probably.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, it's very clear to you, you know, what we mean when we say we know someone is we know about them, about the human being with that name. That's what knowing, that's what we know. But then that's not what self says to itself. Self says, I know myself, and now because we've been shared a lot of time together, when you first meet a self, you don't know their self. You only have to be with them a little while for self to say, I now know you. It's a complete delusion. But because I know, and the root of the delusion is I know myself, because I'm aware, I'm self-aware, then I can be you aware, as well as me aware. It's bullshit. It's a total lie. It's an utter facade. And yet this, we collude together as selves collude with each other, because otherwise the aloneness can feel totally overwhelming for self. Because the truth is, this life is completely and utterly, dreadfully for self, alone. There is no other. The otherness is made up. There is no otherness. Without me-ness, there's no other. Other only exists because I exist.
Yeah.
And the aloneness is not, again, I will say this is why, that I would emphasize this is not why I was looking for. I wasn't looking for more aloneness. I think you'd best not pretend that that's what you have been hoping for. To be more alone? Exactly. That's what I was always seeking. So here's a great paradox. The absolute aloneness of life is the end of the possibility of loneliness. I was terrified of loneliness. I didn't even like physically being on my own bodily. I was always craving being an extrovert character, you know. I mean, extrovert and introverts are it's a bit made up. But some human beings, some selves are very afraid of being the only self. They need to have the illusion of being with other selves. Extroverts feel this intensely. Introverts find it difficult to get because truthfully, they find other selves fucking annoying and would rather be on their own. And then what happens is, here's a story, most introverts want to feel completed by an extrovert so they feel more socially confident. And extroverts want to be with an introvert so that they feel more solid and secure because they feel so needy. Because introverts are really attracted to extroverts because they feel contained and self-confident, quietly. You know, that quiet strength that extroverts like me just talk non-stop to not feel the dread of the aloneness and crave others' company and attention. So it is funny that they get together to feel complete with each other, but they fucking annoy each other to death because they're coming from two different, very different perspectives of self. I did a lot of looking into that when I was a therapist, which is good fun. But you know, so you wonder why, so we come, you pick, you unconsciously, it's all wonderfully unconscious, you pick a partner who will make you the successful, complete self. So I wish I was a bit more introvert and self-confident and self-assured. Now I really get the sense of that from her. So maybe if I'm with her, then that will make me complete. Of course, there isn't anyone to be, and the futility of it is, it's all very tragic, beautifully tragic, because of course there can't be any completion. So I can still be moved to tears by all of that.
About what we said before.
The tragedy of the impossibility of becoming complete.
No, like that you said nobody can know somebody else, and now I understand. It's like exactly the same. Like I cannot know who I am.
No.
And that's why it's just the same.
Yeah. Well, the self needs, I don't know if you've thought about this or you've laughed about this and cried about it. So self-awareness, which is knowing yourself, self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-consciousness, there has to be two selves. Maybe 3, maybe 17. There is no limit to how many selves have a conversation with other selves. But just self-awareness itself is wonderfully ridiculous. Because which self-aware of self? So there's got to be some separation, otherwise there can be no awareness of. So immediately there's 2, and then of course then there's the critical self. Then there's the self-loathing self. Then there's the self-affirming self. Then there's all these voices. And the wonderful thing about, I love psychology, but every self is essentially schizophrenic in the sense of there is not a self. Otherwise there could be no knowing of self. You've got to separate a part of self from self in order to know, to be able to be aware of. And then there's another one to criticize, then there's another one to encourage, and then there's another one to analyze, and then there's all these voices. So it turns out that the emptiness is the wholeness. You won't see the emptiness. You won't know the emptiness. There's nothing to know. You'll only know the fullness. There can only be knowing of what is. There is no knowing of what isn't. So that's why if anyone asks me, so how is it before and after? How is it different? It's exactly the same. That's the fullness. And completely different. That's the emptiness, which isn't anything. So perception, the appearance is as it appears, exactly as it appears, and it's totally empty. You can't, but you can only speak of the fullness. And all of that is the story. It's lovely that the stories are liberated to be just the stories that they are. There's no true and false stories. No story is more true than another story. That's lovely. You no longer, there's no requirement at all to keep trying to work out, so how near to the truth is that? I mean, how much effort have you put into, yeah, I can see that might be closer. That's definitely not, that's bullshit. When the bullshit and the absolute truth are not two, now that's the peace that passes all understanding. If it's all bullshit and it's all truth, how lovely. So I like to talk about it. I do. Yeah. I love speaking about it. I do this every day. No fucker wants to listen.
Talking to yourself.
This is how it gets. You might, if you ever start speaking about this, inevitably you're going to be called arrogant. Because it really sounds, because there is a love, everyone I know who speaks about this, there is a love of speaking about it. Even though it's no point. But that is, it's unconditional. There we go. Thank you.
So, 15-minute break?
Okay. Not the half an hour that I took last time.
Well, depending on your concept of 50 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good.